Our keynote speaker this morning is Dr. Malcolm Astley. And Dr. Astley spent 37 years as a public educator, as a teacher, a counselor, an assistant principal, and a principal in the Boston area. His daughter, many of you may know this story. It happened here in Massachusetts. Lauren Dunn Astley was murdered by her former boyfriend in July 2011. And Dr. Astley is here with us today to share his story and to lead us in a discussion about education and prevention and how we can leave this room today and apply it to our own families and our own communities and our own schools. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Astley.
Thanks. I will. I'm so pleased to be here with you this morning and admiring of what you're doing. It's the kind of thing that gives me a great deal of hope. I often think I'm kidding myself in terms of the progress, but you're helping to confirm that we're moving. I thank you for inviting me to talk with you about the important, challenging matter of engaging boys and men to take on boys and men's violence against girls and women. For decades, we have left the challenge in the hands of girls and women, largely alone. We thank them for their courage, strength, and determination. We have often even left out any reference to boys and men in naming the problem, for instance, often using the vague phrase, violence against women, or domestic violence. In both phrases, it is as if the violence is happening to the women out of nowhere. We males also acted similarly, that is, being absent for decades in relation to women's right to vote. But for the 19th Amendment to achieve passage in 1919, critical to this success were men, since they were the only ones who could vote, and men's involvement in the formation of men's leagues in support of women's right to vote. What a noble idea. We're at a similar point in history now, which you are taking on so well together comprehensively today, with girls and women, and boys and men, community leaders, neighbors, professional counselors, public health leaders, and educators, and saving the best for last, your community's youth and our hopes for the future. I add that I think the vast majority of boys and men find the violence against girls and women to be disgusting and repulsive. The real challenge is in building the capacity of boys and men to act on their disgust about the violence and with courage, strength, and creativity to act on their caring for girls, women, and each other, so as to veto violence, as the Center for Disease Control's new campaign emphasizes. So I have hard things to talk about with you today, but that's the way we grow and how our culture betters itself. We can do it. We have brought so many other forms of injustice and harm to a stop in our country. We founded this country on the belief that monarchy unjustly put too much power in the hands of one person, depriving others of their just rights, and that determination of leadership through genes or gender was unwise and unjust. We instead believed in democracy and in more freedom from governmental dictates. We struggled against and finally prevailed against slavery and the idea that one person could own another, even though there's some frightening signs of resurgence in the sex trade to which we need to continue to pay attention. We finally, with women and men working together, gave women the right to vote and to own property just one lifetime ago. So brief. Later, we struggled toward and succeeded in the honoring of civil rights and the rights of women in the workplace, though we have further to go in these areas, as we know in part from President Obama's own accounts of his experiences facing prejudice as a youth. We've finally taken significant steps to provide better resources in support of those with special needs. We finally took steps to protect children from abuse. We have made so much progress, and we can take this next important step now to prevent boys and men's violence against girls and women, and even to make progress on preventing boys and men's violence against each other or against school settings and the people there, which we continue to witness. I do want to make sure that you're looking after yourself in this process of our trying to improve things. If this gathering or my talk stirs up your concerns about yourself or a partner or your family or someone else that you know, please take time to check in with a parent or another trusted relative, a wise friend, perhaps slightly older, a trusted teacher or guidance counselor, to get whatever help you need. Please don't be alone with a problem. Hold on now, please, and keep having the courage and strength to care that brought you here this morning, and to bear with me if I falter in talking about matters that can set off my own deep caring and sometimes tears. If the tears come, they're good tears of caring, and I do recover relatively quickly. And I also note that I'm going through some intense but similar form of what each person goes through in a breakup. This kind of pain we feel when we're separated from someone we care about deeply is one we need to recognize together and support each other through, since it is, with different degrees of intensity, one of the main challenges that it is in life to be a caring person. We connect deeply and we experience significant pain when we have to move apart. And that is normal and important for us to learn to be open about and cope with well together. I believe that sharing the tears of loss in safe places and talking about the feelings involved and what led to them eventually leads to the laughter of connection again. People who are able to cry well often can laugh well too. As Patriots coach Bill Belichick said after the loss to the Broncos, a loss which I acknowledge a few of you might have loved, as Belichick said about this significant loss, we need to look back, learn what we can, and move on. That process in sports is not easy, and it's far harder in relationships when personal pride and self-value and your identity are so closely involved. The tears of loss should be allowed to flow in safe places, and that then allows for the laughter of new connection. Both are vital skills to develop in order to live fully and to bounce back, even if slowly, from the normal but hard losses and rejections of life. We need to support each other in facing those well and building resilience, the capacity to recover well without bitterness, without numbness. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter, so said the Reverend Martin Luther King, Jr. Again, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. I'm here this morning to emphasize and honor the importance of the groundbreaking conversations that you are having here and in the school settings, the better to bring about the end of silence about violence, about teen dating violence initiated by both genders, and breakup violence, and especially the role of boys and men's often harsh violence against girls and women, and eventually someday its connection with boys and men's violence against each other. You were perhaps part of the start of a new era, adults and leaders and young people together, and it's what you, your schools, your families, your local agencies, your youth and communities continue to do after this gathering that really matters. As you know now, I'm the father of Lauren Dunn Astley. You may not know the hard news that Lauren was beaten, strangled, and slashed to death by her former boyfriend 3 years ago, this July, when she was 18. He is now serving a life term in prison without parole. 2 lives have been completely wrecked and thousands of people hurt and damaged in the process. We need to do all we can to prevent such terrible harm, loss, tragedy, pain, and expense For example, the cost of something like $5 billion a year it takes now to keep such perpetrators in jail in our country. We need to find them earlier in life, further upstream, as they say, and provide effective interventions to help and guide them, and to prevent the damage that they could cause later downstream. We need to name and dismantle the hard-to-see cultural grooming of our boys and men toward impulsive and violent action. We need to promote the courage and strength to care in place of taking the easy, quick, and often fear-filled road of acting on rejection, pain, and jealousy with tendencies to over-control and with violence. It takes much more strength and courage to care and bear that normal, tough pain that is part of breakups, and mourn well, and then move on, as Bill Belichick said. This challenge is not simply a matter of blaming violence on genes and the human male, and using the false kind of biological excuse that's been used repeatedly in history to explain and allow to continue a specific unjust and harmful condition, such as legitimizing the domination by a monarch, as in Egypt or old Europe, or by the Aryan race in Nazi Germany, or by many cultures, including our own, in the time of slavery. Action is within our reach to identify and reverse our own cultural rearing of boys and men to take violent paths toward meeting their needs, paths that in fact often have the exact opposite effect of their intentions and leave boys and men in pain, frustrated, angry, alone, and without the skills to name and work with their own feelings or those of others in building effective relationships, and also skills in letting go of those relationships and moving on when necessary without shame or blame for the relationships ending, with skills in finding safe places to let the pain out, in coping with the pain, and with deep caring for both the self and the partner, all with the fancy name of compassion, compassion for the self and the other. To make my daughter Lauren more real for you, and so she's not just a name, we'll show a DVD of her and friends with Lauren singing a solo in the background with her a cappella group. In the photos, they look and sound utterly happy, and of course you know that's far from the whole truth. We have to be very careful these days not to increase pressure on each other and on our youth constantly through such lovely pictures here and on Facebook and in other media, pressure to look happy and beautiful and popular always. We want you to know, and to know that we know, and I'm speaking to our youth here, that it is what is going on inside you and us that really counts, and we need to do a better job with you and each other in providing safe places for us to talk about and work constructively on what's going on inside of us, sometimes together and sometimes in separate gender groups. We'll play that DVD now.
Go on, till you leave me breathless. I'm waiting for you only. The slightest touch and I feel weak. I cannot hide from you. I cannot hide. I'm losing the will to try. Can't hide it. Can't hide it. So go on, come on, leave me breathless. Tempt me, tease me until I can't deny this love and feeling. Make me long for your kiss and go on, yeah, come on. And if there's no tomorrow, and all we have is here and now, I'm happy just to have you. You're all the love I need somehow. It's like a dream, although I'm not asleep. And I never want to wake up. Don't lose it, don't leave it. tempt me, tease me, till I can't deny this love and feeling. Make me long for your kiss and go on, yeah, come on.
All that sparkle is gone now, a kind of sparkle similar to that in each person and in you, the unique sparkle which we hope and want you to learn to treasure and build and support in others. That voice is silent now. Her stuffed animals are steadfast in waiting in her bed for a return that's not going to happen. More important, Lauren stands for the 3 to 4 women who similarly die every day in our country in all races, types of locations, and socioeconomic conditions. That adds up to 100,000 young women murdered in our lifetimes in this country. The same number is that of the American soldiers who died in World War I. Many more girls and women suffer many less violent but still deeply harmful kinds of abuse, as already cited by Suzanne. 1 in 4 boys also face physical, sexual, psychological, emotional, or financial abuse at some point in their lives. It's time that we join together to change how we do things and bring this violence and abuse to a stop. 1, I think we need to reframe breaking up and thinking of it in a new way. We need to think about it and teach our youth, including your children in the future and your younger brothers and sisters, now to talk about it differently. I note that we spent decades letting adults and our young in car collisions be maimed and killed and sailing through the air inside colliding cars and colliding in turn at high speeds with glass and steel. At some point, just 20 years ago in Massachusetts, we simply woke up and said we can and ought to do things differently. And we responded with seatbelts and prevented many injuries and much pain and the loss of many thousands of lives, and we saved money. You might think it's always been this way with seatbelts, younger folks here, but no, we finally recognized a problem that had been with us for nearly 100 years, and we fixed it. We've had success as well in helping our youth and friends understand, and I need your help here, that friends don't let friends drive. That was not a norm 30 years ago. We've accomplished that, and we can go on and do it in this area as well. Designated drivers are far more common, thank goodness, and it's not too big a step now to add that friends don't let friends go alone to see partners for or after breakups. We're due to take a step now in providing some seatbelts and designated drivers in relation to breakups to make them safer. New information, new concepts, new skills, new supportive community scaffolding, and new norms. Yes, it is terribly painful to have someone break up with you. It is one of the worst pains in life. Apart from the death of a loved one, torture, and hunger, there's nothing higher on the human trauma scale. And it's time for us all to acknowledge that and stop being silent about it. And no, it's not about losing your value or your self-respect, so that you let the pain turn into anger and forget about what is important and allow yourself to snap and then turn toward harming a former boyfriend or girlfriend or yourself. If you really care about that person breaking up with you, you want them to find a better fit. You were not dumped. Painful as the loss may feel, the fit was not good for both of you, and it needs to be good for both of you in an effective relationship. You were not dumped, painful as it may feel. The fit was not good for both of you, and it needs to be in an effective relationship. Veto violence. It takes more courage and strength to care. When a relationship ends, learn from it, but no shame, no blame for the relationship's end. And I pause to clarify that there may be appropriate blame for any abusive behavior, but not for the relationship's ending. Again, remember Coach Bill Belichick's good advice after the Patriots' loss: look back at it, learn from it, and move on. I add, find and create good trusted places to share the tears of loss, uncertainty, and confusion so you can move on to the laughter of connection and confidence again. 2, in terms of providing better seat belts to help each other with the important, painful, and normal challenge of breaking up, I can imagine our working carefully together to train slightly older peer group volunteer leaders supervised by counselors in schools to run confidential, voluntary, ongoing breakup support groups to guide younger peers through the average number of 8 breakups that young people experience. It's important to know that. All right, 1 down, 7 to go. And of course, it's not that simple, but knowing it helps. 70% of young people tell their peers first about breakups, so let's think about training peers how to really help confidentially with counselors as backups. That way we could also establish new norms in support of caring and growth and against violence and harm. 3, we especially need to attend to the increasing isolation of boys and men and the pressures they face from our culture, our movies, our television shows, and our video games. Pressure on boys and men to seek winning and avoid losing at all costs, to compete and dominate and be cool and scary, often spending their lives consumed with and avoiding shame, and then ending up like Aaron Hernandez, formerly of the Patriots, or Whitey Bulger, who was beaten seriously during his childhood, instead of learning to care deeply about others and to be resilient. That is being able to grieve fully and to bounce back, even if slowly, from loss or rejection, and coming to effective terms with life's normal, frequent rejections and losses. I wonder what you think the best kind of New Directions groups would be for boys and men to discuss facing the cultural messages to avoid losing at all costs and to avoid being a loser. Where did we begin to buy into that concept as driving us? What messages would be better for our culture to be sending? 4, it might be helpful to talk in New Directions groups as well about what we hope might be some of the most important qualities we want to nurture in boys and men. My counselor friend Bob Gracia suggests we need to encourage boys and men toward dependability. That is, to be a person friends can count on for understanding and guidance. To encourage boys and men to be people who will tell you the truth and help friends figure out the truth. To encourage boys and men to be a person who does not judge and criticize, but who will supportively point out mistakes in himself and others and stand with friends to figure out more effective approaches. To be a person who appreciates how you as a friend, how you lean into the world and supports you to grow that way. To be a person who can celebrate your victories, even those he values less than you, but celebrates because he's pleased that you're successful and happy. A person who knows that you will fall, as we all must, and stands with the bandages and the ointment ready, who will sit with you while the healing of time takes effect. Most of all, to support boys and men who have strength and courage to be caring persons who, when times are tough or a breakup happens, do not disappear, nor grow hostile and diss or harm someone who has decided to to pursue another partner and direction, nor, and just as tragic, to harm themselves. We need to support boys and men to talk through these hard times with each other and support each other toward caring solutions for both persons in a breakup. 5, I think we could do well to bring this matter of violence into the light and reject it. We can take steps now and join together to let the light into the dark room of the hard challenge of boys and men's violence against girls and women, against your sisters and your cousins, your nieces, and your own daughters in the future, and your own mothers and aunts and grandmothers now and in the past, as well as boys and men's violence against other boys and men. Boys and men can step up together with girls and women and veto violence. I add, it takes more courage and strength to care. We know it is right, and we can have the courage and strength to find our way to the era of mutual respect toward which Reverend King was pointing, and which in the end benefits all of us and our communities. I wonder what you think we should be saying about violence, its causes, and what we should be doing about it together. 6, I think it would be useful if we steadily took steps to look underneath anger. I urge that we look under the anger because I think, not in all cases, but in general, there are often hidden needs there, under the anger. You know just how irritated you can get when you're hungry and you're not taking care of the need for food. I think anger is most usefully seen as a warning signal that some important need is not being met. If we can have the courage to dig in and unearth and fulfill those often hidden, inarticulated needs, we may well succeed in liberating young men and women, liberating each other, and particularly our boys and young men, from the pain of uncertainty, anger, isolation, and the continued avoidance of losing that can haunt young males. I wonder what kind of safe places you think we need so we and the youth can talk about such hard matters. 7, I think we need to train boys and men, and girls and women for that matter, to call each other out when objectifying is going on. That is, turning someone into an object in our thinking, an object that is there only for our own interests and wants or sexual desires and has no valid feelings or rights. We need to cultivate in each other the ability to move from being a passive bystander to being an active upstander. Not necessarily someone who will charge into a fight when objectifying is going on, but who's willing to say something as simple as, hey, what if that was my sister or yours? I'll wrap up my talk by asking you to think about why it may take more courage to care than to follow pain and anger. It takes courage and strength to care, in my view, because if you're going to care, you're going to get hurt and feel pain. Friendships cooling and a friend turning away and breakups, they hurt so much. We've allowed ourselves to be care and becoming attached to someone. We, along with other species like dogs, ducks, and geese, were designed to do that kind of attaching, as if we each have a large Velcro patch that automatically and in a hard-to-control way latches onto others and also unlatches, both for reasons we often do not easily understand. It takes a long time to gain any control over that Velcro. Ask any adult in the room. With the unlatching, whether we did it or the other person did it, often comes pain, intense pain like no other. It takes courage to care to enter relationships when we know for certain that they will all end in breakups, divorce, or death, along with potentially significant pain of loneliness and self-doubt. This is our tough human path. As a result, we need to learn to face this dramatically challenging fact of life with skills in mourning or grieving, and with good old normal tears, as our president has demonstrated on several occasions, one being in connection with the deaths of so many young people and also teachers in Newtown, Connecticut, at the hands of another angry, isolated male. It was important and good for the president to cry and let out that pain and share it with others to build caring. It takes courage to accept the fact that relationships end, and it takes courage to go ahead and still care and still connect, and also disconnect and have the courage to care again and not blame or feel ashamed. We often tend to cover up our pain, uncertainty, fear, and shame with anger in order to protect ourselves. It's easier to be angry and see our former partner as an enemy instead of facing the self-doubt that breaking up stirs up and learning the needed skills to hold on to self-respect in the face of rejection and also maintain respect for our former partner, even though their turning away hurt us. It was not their fault or yours. It is just what happens when people connect and disconnect. It's easier to be cool and distant and angry, but that leads to loneliness and sometimes harm and away from the joy of connectedness and strong community with others, brought about by the courage and strength to care. It takes more courage to care as well, because you may have to face the worry that you're going to lose track of your own wants and needs and face the fear of never getting your share and the fear of feeling unworthy as a result. It's easier to be angry and self-centered. It takes courage and strength to figure out what it is an appropriate amount of those needs to take on from those around you. But part of the magic is that in taking on appropriate amounts of the needs of others, young people and old grow and glow in feeling connected and in seeing the gratitude and competence promoted by the very act of helping the needs of others to be addressed. By talking about how to have safe breakups and by passing the best ideas on to others and by giving voice to these matters, you can be part of this big new wheel of fairness, justice, and caring, which is starting to roll forward to prevent a lot of violence and harm and expense in the areas of teen dating, in breakups, in bullying, or within families. You are precious. You are. Each of us is. That's what the Reverend King was saying in his emphasis on mutual respect. Together we can fix this problem of dating and breakup violence just as we have fixed so many other human problems involving harm, pain, and unfairness. We can, through careful, caring talk and growing self-awareness and self-respect, deep self-confidence, help usher in the age of mutual respect to which Reverend King beckoned us. Veto violence. It takes more courage to care. No shame, no blame. Thank you.